Have you ever heard of the game Super Mario but thought that it looked too lighthearted and fun? Instead of collecting coins and crushing turds, would you rather be eating bugs and getting devoured by flesh-eating grass? Are you excited about the changing climate and upcoming fall of civilization? Do you wish that centipedes were bigger and could fly? Do you think that the end of Evangelion could have used more worms? Have you ever looked outside and seen a squirrel get flung by one of those spinny bird feeders, but before it could recover, a hawk swooped in to eviscerate the poor thing and thought, "Damn, I wish that were me." Well, do I have just the game for you? I don't really know where to start with this game. Describing RainWorld as any less than a 2D platformer survival immersive sim horror rage game seems disingenuous. But what the fuck does any of that mean? That's gonna take some time to unpack, so let's start simple with the... Damn it, this isn't starting simple, is it? Usually I can kind of hand-wave this section with some convenient comparisons, but that can't really happen for RainWorld. Sure, the actual art style is pixel art, and there's plenty of other games with beautiful pixel art to point to, but RainWorld's exact style is unique. The environments, beyond being beautifully drawn, are relatively straightforward. RainWorld's setting is post-apocalyptic, and as such you're not walking over hills and through natural caves. Instead, the environment consists of decayed concrete and ancient machinery that is broken, rusted, and otherwise ruined by time and the unbearable pressure of the rain. Because of this, a lot of places you crawl around and through are mostly just brown and gray, but that doesn't mean that it's not interesting to look at. You run over trash heaps of compacted metal, platform on top of steel beams, and climb up the rebar that once built this place. The purpose of these machines you platform around have been mostly lost to time, but they're just enough familiar elements for you to maybe piece together a few recognizable objects to clue you in on what these places used to be. The locations you visit are very distinct from each other with their own visual styles and terrain patterns, and without spoiling anything, these locations can get a bit strange. While generally color is reserved to make creatures and items stand out, there are still brightly colored plants that grow from between the cracks. And often you can see colorful graffiti remaining from the long-dead civilization you wander through, or more recent paintings made by creatures that now make this place their home. The creatures are where things get a bit more complicated. They're still drawn with pixel art, but they're not just simple sprites. RainWorld uses procedural animation to bring their creatures to life. The pixel art is stitched on top of a rig that physically interacts with the environment dynamically, meaning that the AI has to actually drag itself through the world and doesn't just have a looping GIF walk cycle. This grants them a great sense of weight and believability as they too must clamber over the same terrain as you, because of course your character isn't exempt from this either. Sometimes you really have to be mindful of how you position your body, as you can get stuck on both bits of terrain and the bodies of other creatures. This is what makes the game unique, and uniquely annoying sometimes. This physics-based AI system does mean that the creatures get a little weird occasionally, but creatures get a little weird in real life too. The actual visual design of the creatures is superb, even if they're mostly just silhouettes. Everything in this world seems to be at least a bit biomechanical. All the way from the lizards with their sparkling neon colors, to the horrifying tortured abominations of hatred that exist only to kill, RainWorld's creatures are rendered enough to give them a unique shape, but are left ambiguous enough to leave some of their stranger parts up to imagination. Also, fair warning, if you have arachnophobia, I think this game will just straight up kill you, so you've been warned. RainWorld's sound design is relatively simple, but solid. Just about every creature makes a distinguishable noise, and you can tell roughly where that noise is coming from if they're off screen. Everything sounds good and as you would expect. The real outstanding thing is the music. It's not omnipresent, in fact I'd guess that about half the time you're left alone with your thoughts. It only seems to consistently pick up whenever you first enter a new zone, playing the area's theme for a few minutes before fading out, helping set the tone for the region. I do really enjoy the game's music whenever it pops up, and I'd say that its sparseness helps make it stand out. The other instance music will appear is if there's a predator about, where danger music will begin to play. It starts subtle, just warning you to be alert, but if you get spotted into a chase it picks up, and man, is it good. If you can't afford RainWorld but still want its aesthetic experience, I recommend putting on some electronic ambient music and go crawling through a landfill being chased by the junkyard dogs. Or just take a walk through Detroit, whichever is easiest. In RainWorld, you play as a pathetic little worm creature called a slug cat. As such, you have the abilities of both slug and cat. You can climb up poles, slide through pipes, catch bats, eat mold, use weaponry, and die horribly. This forms the base core gameplay of RainWorld, which is a platformer. Through the entire game, your ability to survive and progress is mainly determined by your ability to jump good. Unfortunately for me, I do not jump good. One bad move can mean death, which means that I died quite a lot. If you would like, you could take note of how many times I die in this video, because I will not be reusing any death clips. It may be hard to tell the difference between a few of them, but trust me that they are separate and I'm just consistently bad. This game's difficulty is brutal, to say the least. All it takes is one bite from just about anything and you're sent back to your last shelter, unless you're very lucky, somewhat prepared, or any better at the game than me. The platforming can get quite challenging on its own, even without the massive jet-powered birds trying to snatch you out of the air. The movement mechanics can take some time to get used to, and I still often fuck it up. But can you really blame me here? How was I supposed to predict that I'd be sent plummeting to my death because of this little brick here? This is what I mean by the controls taking some getting used to. It's hard to explain, but it feels somewhat inconsistent when trying to get the slugcat to cooperate with grabbing poles and climbing. Just grab the goddamn pole, you stupid worm. No, not that fucking pole. Where the hell are you going, you moron? I made this jump so easy earlier. Just grab the goddamn fucking ledge. There are all kinds of movement techs you could potentially learn in order to better your chances, which I learned basically none of. If you do master them, you can zoom around the level like a crackhead with a sawzall in an unwatched Denny's parking lot. Luckily, all you really need to do to survive is jump from pole to pole and you'll be fuck! The game does mix it up plenty with new patterns of terrain and a couple new tools for exploration to keep things from getting stale. Yes, it's a grappling hook. I wish I'd kept that for the rest of the game. Level design is tight, mostly, and actually getting the hang of movement feels great after the initial adjustment period. Most of the time the places you can and can't go are fairly obvious, but sometimes the foreground can be misleading and either make traversable tunnels look closed off or just obscure your position, which leads me to the issue I have with this game. RainWorld is a bit of a communication problem. The game operates by having a stationary camera that switches between rooms as you move. This is totally fine for rooms that are small and can be contained within a single screen, but can become messy in rooms that are larger. It can be disorienting having to track where you're on screen when moving just a few pixels to the left or right in the middle of a platforming area can flip where you need to look. At worst, the camera can obscure danger that is right next to you until you're walking into its mouth. But even more frustrating is this. Can you tell me the difference between this screen and this screen? This first one, if I drop down, I just move to the next part of the room. This one will instantly kill you if you fall down. Apparently there's some shadowy smoke or something to tell you what is and isn't a death drop, but I never noticed it in my gameplay even after I knew about it. How about this room and this room? Well, in the left room you cannot move past the screen's left or right edges, but in the room on the right you can go past either edge. How can you tell? RainWorld doesn't just label itself as a platformer though. It's a survival game of sorts. Every 10 to 15 minutes-ish you will have to find a shelter to hibernate in or get turned to paste by the rain. In order to rest in a shelter, move your respawn point, and therefore generally progress, you need to find food. Most of the time getting food isn't a big deal. Just find some fruit, bat flies, or elephant's foot and eat enough to fill your hunger pips to this line and you'll be fine to hibernate. Extra food carries over after you hibernate to the next cycle, meaning that you don't need to find as much food to simply survive. The eating part of RainWorld survival is relatively easy, as food is not too hard to come by if you know what you're looking for. If you don't have enough food when you hibernate, you begin to starve, and in the next cycle you must fill your hunger more than usual or die, and get your progress reset to before you started starving in the first place. Only once in my playthrough did I ever starve, and that was because I was stuck in a platforming area with no food for 2 cycles. The real difficult part of survival in RainWorld are the predators. The National Geographic kind, not the Disney kind. The main obstacle in your way to do anything is that you are a small little worm and everything thinks that you make a great chew toy. There are a wide variety of creatures that want to kill you, each with varying abilities and behaviors that require different tactics to deal with. The clearest way to demonstrate this are with the simplest predators, the lizards. They are by far the most prevalent enemy type, appearing in almost every region in the game, with a total of 9 different subspecies that all behave a bit differently. Take the green lizard, the lizard you're most likely to encounter first. They are large, strong, durable, and decently fast, but they are also heavy, clumsy, and stupid. They can be avoided by just climbing up a pole and jumping over them, or by being on the other side of a pit, which they have about 50% chance of falling into while trying to get to you. Combat is an option, but their high health makes it impractical and dangerous. Pink lizards can climb poles, but are slower than green lizards and are much weaker. You can easily outrun them, or if you have a spear and an opportunity, you can kill them with relative ease. White lizards are massive pains in the ass because they can cling to background walls, have active camouflage, and a chameleon-like tongue. These fuckheads like to sit around transport pipes and kill you before you even have a chance to maybe notice them. They are, however, less prone to actually pursue a chase and prefer to wait in ambush, and are therefore easy to lose. They have the same health as a pink lizard, so if you do get the drop on one, it isn't super hard to kill them, or at least hurt them enough to get them to go away. Just be aware that lizards you attack and don't kill will remember and will try harder to kill you next time. Separate from lizards, vultures are also an omnipresent threat. They are large, flying predators that can swoop in at any time wherever there's an open sky, or just fucking anywhere, I guess. The only warning you get is their shadow descending in the background a second or two before they ruin your day. They're almost totally unpredictable. Sometimes an area you have crossed a half dozen times safely will become a death zone because a vulture has decided to just hang around and not leave this time around. You can't hide from them, so your only option is to run and find a place they can't squeeze into and wait for them to go away. Or if you're feeling brave and have a surplus of spears lying around, you can fight them off with a handful of good stabs. Just be aware that if you knock off their mask, you should be ready for a fight to the death. There are a ton more creatures you'll encounter across the game, and they all contribute to the thing that RainWorld is going for. RainWorld's predators, and every creature really, aren't totally predictable. I touched on this with the vultures because they're the most obvious case, but let me explain. They aren't standard platformer enemies that waddle back and forth endlessly. They move around the area in the same way that you do, hunting for prey, fighting each other, and fleeing from bigger predators. A lizard that killed you in one cycle may not be there the next. This is part of the game's intention to build an ecosystem that you are just simply a part of. This is the thing that RainWorld tries, and I think largely succeeds, in doing. You're not the chosen one hero of this story, you're just part of the ecosystem. In fact, pretty low on the food chain. I really enjoy watching all the other creatures interact with each other, sometimes to my own detriment. Everything has its place in RainWorld's alien ecosystem. Squid cadas are these rotund, buzzing, mostly harmless, and totally ignorable creatures that can be found across the game. They can't directly harm you and you can't eat them, but they're not just set dressing. They hunt for the same bat flies that you do, so you compete with them for food in some instances. They can also be seen fishing for leeches, which is a good thing for you if they succeed because that means less leeches for you to swim through, though they're not really the best at doing that. They dance with each other, get hunted by lizards, and if you attack them, they all start trying to ram and generally annoy you, mostly to their own detriment. The more practical use is that you can grab them and hover around with them, which is great All of this for a minor creature that you can safely ignore your whole playthrough. This philosophy extends to many of the other creatures. Lizards will fight each other for territory or over your body, which might just allow you to escape if you're still alive. Scavengers will move around in packs collecting items, and of course everything else is also hunting each other. Because of the inherent unpredictability with giving the game's enemies some manner of free will, it can feel pretty unfair at times. Enemies can, and will, hang around necessary transport pipes, making progressing through them very difficult or just impossible. Most of the time the game's map is actually designed around this, offering several different routes through them to circumvent dangerous rooms, but sometimes there really is no other way, and sometimes you just don't get a chance to try. This is why I consider RainWorld to be a rage game, to a degree. If you're unfamiliar with the concept, a rage game is basically a game designed to be frustrating to play. Typically, they have one simple to understand movement system that is very difficult to master, with punishment for failing being a severe loss of progress. Think Jump King, Getting Over It, and to a lesser extent Super Meat Boy. It may be slightly unfair to compare RainWorld to Getting Over It, but the game definitely frustrated me sometimes. Things can feel completely unfair and out of your control, which is probably what it was going for with the whole ecosystem thing, but that combined with how the game handles road progression can be tiresome. Each time you survive a cycle, your karma increases, and every time you die, it decreases. Connecting every region of the game are doors that you need to hit a karma threshold to open. If you just barely have enough karma to open a door and can't find a shelter before you die again, you're back on the other side of that door with not enough karma to open it again. Then you have to survive to build your karma back up and hope you don't die trying to find food and dig yourself a deeper hole. Usually the game does give low karma requirements for doors in difficult regions, but you can get unlucky anywhere, potentially leading to a cycle of death and frustration that is, funnily enough, actually thematically relevant to the game's story, but let's not get into that. If you manage to keep your karma at max for enough cycles, you gain the Survivor achievement, which, as well as just being a Steam achievement, also allows you to travel through any previously discovered shelter once. You only get to bring whatever item you have in your stomach at the time, more on that in just a moment, leaving anything else you had behind in the shelter you travel from. Once you unlock the Survivor achievement, there are a handful of other achievements you can unlock that also give you one fast travel each. I only ever used the fast travel once, because I didn't really feel the need to return anywhere I had been before, but if you just wanted to revisit a fun location, you're going to either have to walk all the way there yourself, or work to get an achievement for a one-way ticket, which is certainly different. The fun parts of the ecosystem are why I referred to this game as an immersive sim. If you're not deeply entombed in gamer culture, an immersive sim is, roughly, a game that relies heavily on consistent systems for the player to exploit as they see fit, providing more player freedom in problem solving, leading to natural or immersive gameplay. That's my understanding of the genre anyway. Prominent examples include Deus Ex, Thief, Hitman, Cruelty Squad, any game made by Arcane Studios, and House Party? RainWorld may not be as deep as Deus Ex's skill sheet, or provide as many tools as Dishonored, or let you take your dick out like House Party, but it does have systems to exploit to tip the scales in your favor and actually progress. Spears are primarily weapons, but they can also be stuck into walls to become short poles to climb on. The uses for this should be immediately obvious, though sometimes it feels kinda inconsistent and can be rather inconvenient when you miss a spear throw mid-combat. With a little bit of movement tech, you can also stick them into the ground vertically to get a bit of extra height. And if you're slick enough, you can even stick spears into walls at the end of a jump to clear gaps you otherwise wouldn't. There we go. The game never directly tells you can do this, so I just figured it might be possible given the rules I'd already learned. While there are a number of other tools to finding the environment from rocks to grenades, your inventory is very limited. You can only carry one thing in each hand and swallow one additional item to keep in your stomach for later. I'm sure nothing could go wrong from swallowing a high explosive. Managing your inventory, as limited as it is part of the challenge and requires you to use what you find around you, or take up precious space on or in your slugcat. These are the most common of the systems provided, but of course, the more interesting ones are tied to the ecosystem. Remember how I said lizards remember if you attack them and become more aggressive? They also remember if you feed them and become less aggressive or even friendly, protecting you from other lizards. Knocking a vulture's mask off makes it hunt you relentlessly until one of you is dead, but any unmasked vulture will also be attacked by other vultures, and you can grab the dropped mask to scare off lizards or trade with scavengers. Speaking of scavengers, they're the closest thing the game has to friendly NPCs, and they're very bipolar. The more you trade with them, the more they'll like you and be less prone to spearing you for no reason. However, if there's a diplomatic incident, whether on purpose or accidentally, this will piss off the other scavengers, and if you piss them off enough, they'll start actively hunting you down, which is a problem because of the aforementioned grenades. Let's peel off the final layer of this genre onion. Is this game really a horror game? I mean, it looks cuddly enough. Yes. Yes, it is. At least in some places. RainWorld can be very tense with its foreboding atmosphere and unsettling monsters, and while it's lacking the typical 80 decibel indie horror game jump scares, there's plenty to be startled by. It's no Alien Isolation, but, you know, it's kind of fuck! So what is the actual progression and end goal of the game? Obviously, the moment-to-moment goal is just get food and not become food, but you do have an overall objective to push you through the regions. This little yellow fella named Iggy will follow you around and sometimes point you in the direction of nearby shelters and food to help you out. Iggy will also sometimes point in the direction of the objective. Ostensibly, that objective is reuniting with the rest of your Slugcat family, but it doesn't take long for you to find out something else is going on. Going back to the little yellow guy, though, brings me back to the issue. The lack of communication, and that I am chronically stupid. The game is incredibly minimal with its guiding, very much on purpose. Iggy serves as a kind of tutorial entity, displaying holograms showing basic controls and concepts near the beginning of the game. It'll tell you about eating stuff, point at stuff that wants to eat you, and about trading pearls to scavengers, but that's about as deep as its instruction goes. All this other stuff I found out mostly from experimentation and the RainWorld wiki. Yes, I looked at the wiki while in-game. I didn't do it immediately. I really try my best to engage with games like this on their level, and I did discover plenty of things organically. But RainWorld can be so unclear with what it wants you to do, and totally lacking on instruction of how things, sometimes nigh essential things, work, that it just wore me down eventually. I most frequently had to look up maps, especially in the more maze-like areas when you have no idea which direction you're supposed to go or where the nearest shelter is because Iggy just decided to take the day off for no reason, and the in-game map is... This, on top of the already difficult gameplay, got frustrating more than once, and so I resorted to looking stuff up. Specifically, fuck the reindeer. You need them to get across these areas of deadly wormgrass in one specific region, and this is the only time you absolutely need to rely on RainWorld's AI to progress, and, as you may have heard, that can be rather inconsistent. This fucking asshole just decided to turn around a bit short and strand me on this ledge I can't climb up. Why did he do that? Hell if I know. I guess I'll just wait for the rain to kill me. You see these little speckled egg-like things? Use them to lure the deer over and grab their antlers, and throw them to attract the deer in certain directions. Nowhere that I've found is this information even hinted at in-game. Even armed with this information, you still just need to get lucky. I get that the lack of guiding is part of the immersion and service of the whole being part of the ecosystem thing, but at a certain point frustration is more immersion breaking than a Steam guide. Like I said, this is the issue I have with RainWorld. The game is tough, and made needlessly so at some points. So just be aware that the wiki is a good resource if you get stuck or need help dealing with the goddamn fucking— For this very reason, RainWorld isn't for everyone. If you state such in the Steam reviews, you get bombarded with clown emojis, but it's true. Not everyone enjoys this kind of difficult, sometimes repetitive, and often cryptic gameplay. Each bullshit feeling death sending you to your last shelter and punishing you by literally locking progression behind gates until you get good enough to survive enough times in a row. This game really is the Dark Souls of platformers. To be fair, I only died to a bug once. I mean a game bug. This. I don't know what happened, but this is the only glitch I remember seeing in all my hours of gameplay, so it's pretty unlikely to die to this variety of total bullshit. RainWorld took me about 26 hours to beat as a survivor, but as discussed, I'm just generally terrible at games. I got stuck at a couple of places, so your mileage may vary. There are 3, and I kinda hesitate to call them this, difficulty levels in RainWorld, each represented by different characters with slightly varying storylines and abilities. The default character / difficulty is the survivor. Everything I've said so far and a vast majority of the footage has been from that playthrough. The easy mode is the monk, the yellow slug cat. The monk encounters less predators and remaining ones are less aggressive. They also need to eat less food to hibernate. Karma gates are permanently unlocked if traveled through once. Creatures are befriended and tamed more easily, among a few other minor map changes. However, the monk does less damage with spears than normal, so direct combat is a bit more difficult. Once you beat the game once as survivor, you unlock the hunter. The hunter starts in a different place than the survivor and monk, much further away from the game's first objective, and you don't get an observer to guide you at all. Uniquely, the hunter needs to eat meat to survive. No, not batflies, other creatures. You need to hunt squid cata, or lizards, or centipedes, or anything else you can take down. To tip things ever so slightly in your favor, the hunter does increased spear damage and can carry a second spear on their back. However, this is offset by the fact that there are a fuck ton more things trying to eat you, including hard mode enemies. There are also some shelters available to Survivor and Monk that just don't spawn for Hunter. Also, you only get 20 successful cycles to beat the game or you die permanently and need to restart from the beginning. You still need karma to open doors. Some vultures have harpoons now. Good luck! No matter what character you choose, your end goal is always the same, and that goal is lodged deep into the story. The story of RainWorld is, hold on just a minute. RainWorld lore.
1 hour later.
Huh. After researching it, I do like the world building and story. It's unfortunate that in an average playthrough you only get the inscrutable bare minimum. On your usual path, you only get a few scraps of cold, hard lore that barely fit together to form any kind of understandable story, and the ending totally caught me off guard, which I think is the point regardless of how much lore hunting you do beforehand. Not to say it's bad by any means, it's still really interesting, and the little bits of information it does hand out made me want to know more. It's just that getting it naturally is, how do I put it, a goddamn chore. Scattered throughout the world are pearls. Most of them are colorless, white-gray ones that are meant to be traded as scavengers. Some pearls, however, are colored. These colored pearls spawn in fixed locations, often hidden and sometimes requiring a platforming challenge to reach. These colored pearls are one of a kind, and if traded or otherwise lost, they'll disappear from your save file permanently. There is one specific place on the map where you need to take these pearls to get the unique information they contain, and the ability to read these pearls isn't even unlocked until you get to the halfway point of the game. There are 16 of these pearls total, and they can be found in every region, including the furthest ones from the reading location. Needless to say, actually going around and finding all of these pearls and taking them back to one specific place on the map with a very limited number of fast travels and even more limited inventory is an ordeal. I've gotten a couple of these pearls just to see what happens, but I don't think I'll do any more than is convenient. But if you're a true lore hunter and love finding all 28 of Skyrim's Stones of Baronzia, you'll enjoy this. For all the normies out there, we'll just have to settle for the odd encounter with... RainWorld is a very interesting game. I truly mean it when I say there's nothing like it. RainWorld was developed and programmed by an artist, as stated in his GDC talk, and it shows. Despite how punishing and sometimes just unfair it is, it's obvious why this game has a dedicated following it does. There's an active modding scene with a newly added Steam Workshop, which is already full of player-made slug cats and deranged man-made horrors. I give this game my official seal of approval, which I don't have, so accept this gold star sticker with good job written on it in Sharpie I found on my desk instead. Recently, the Downpour expansion released, which has a bunch of new slugcats to play as, with more unique abilities, new regions, new story, and official co-op mode, which is all good, because it means I get to see more of this wonderfully crafted, beautiful setting. I haven't played it yet, but plan to soon, because it looks like more RainWorld, and I kinda like that game. For all 5 of you who care, sorry I haven't uploaded in, This isn't what I was originally planning on covering next, but it has a confusingly similar name. Subscribe to get it when it comes out. In the meantime, you can forget about me and in a couple months wonder who this random guy showing up in your sub feed is. Goodbye.